If you bid on Bring a Trailer on any car or an EV or a collector car or an SUV, are you just burning your money? We're going to talk about that, plus market updates and new predictions. See if you can beat the nerds. The bidding starts now. Nerd! Bid Nerds is your daily YouTube car game show, where we predict the online auction results of the most interesting cars on Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, Carrera Marketplace, and more. It's just like the Price is Right game show. Play along and see if you can beat the nerds. Yeah, can you beat the nerds? That's what we're going to find out right now. Hello, everybody. My name is John Polnik. I'm your host for Bid Nerds. The nerd out on the most interesting cars of the day from all the automotive enthusiast auction sites. We're coming to you live from the Container Park in downtown Las Vegas. I am joined tonight by a bunch of great folks. My partner, Michael Deeb, if I can find the button, in San Francisco. What's up, Michael Deeb?
What's up, JP? Pouring rain here. I hope it's nicer in Vegas. I know we don't like to talk about the weather, but the weather's been ass here since basically December, and today was no exception. Terrible weather. Non-driving weather.
We had a huge windstorm, and to talk about that, which we're not going to talk about the wind or anything like that, Wade Bennett from Tech Daily. How you doing, Wade?
Great. Yes, windy, not fun, boo weather. I will say one other thing to your intro. I don't think it should be, can you see if you can beat the nerds? It's how badly can you beat the nerds week in and week out. But we have somebody else in the 4-seat here who might be able to carry us home this week.
That is true.
Yeah,
Michael D. Who else is here tonight?
The ringer, the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Frank Amoroso, currently of San Diego, California, by way of San Francisco. Frank and I grew up opposite one another. We went to different high schools together and became friends later in life. But Frank is super well received in the Porsche community and has been elevated by the community to the resident of California, the M491 guru. And who better to help us make sense of one of the cars we covered last week? Welcome, Frank. Thank you for joining us. What's happening, buddy?
Hey, thanks so much. Long-time viewer and first-time third nerd. So I appreciate you guys having me on board here.
Oh, well, and so, Frank, that car right behind you, the Gemini Blue, is your PTS, paint to sample, M491, M470 car. I think most people that know who you are know that car because you've been running that car for years. But what is that beautiful guards red thing over your other shoulder? What is that? Is that yours?
No, that's actually a very good friend of mine. That's his 1986 M491 Targa that he bought on Bring a Trailer a few months ago, last fall. And we picked it up in Fort Myers, Florida, and planned to drive it back to Salt Lake City, 2,500 miles. And we made it 2,000 miles to Boulder, Colorado, and pulled off the freeway, put the windows down, and I said, "You smell that? That smells a lot like gasoline." We sprung a fuel leak 80% of the way on the drive. So I'm doing various and sundry things to it here before it goes back to Salt Lake in the spring.
And do you have a lift in that garage?
I don't have a lift in this garage, but my uncle, who's a Porsche factory-trained master mechanic and used to own a shop in Palo Alto, is about 12 minutes away. He's got a 15-car garage with a 2-post lift.
Nice.
And he's got a bitchin' set of tools.
Fast times. All right, JP, where we at?
All right. Well, to start out the show, we got to make sure we shout out to our good friends at Godden Porsche and Godden Classic of Las Vegas. If you were tuning in to the Instagram feed just before we went live here on YouTube. So if you're watching still on Instagram, you got to go over to YouTube so you can see and hear everything. We were talking about how Godden is participating in the Classic Challenge this year with a 491 car. We're going to be talking a lot about 491 cars tonight. If you are looking for parts for your 491 or any classic Porsche, or if you just need a classic Porsche, they are the guys to talk to. Godden Classic, Godden Porsche of Las Las Vegas. And if you are on time to watch the show like the Nerd Herd is, man, let me tell you, the Nerd Herd is here in force tonight. They must have had all their fine Swiss watches serviced at our friends at Hoursmiths. Anthony up there in Idaho, he is the guy that will take your Patek Philippe, your Rolex, your Panerai, and he will get it in tip-top shape, or kind of like Godden Classic, if you're looking for a classic watch, a fine Swiss watch, one that's been, maybe a vintage one or something that's just a little off of new, he is the guy to talk to. He's always got a great selection. Anthony at Hoursmiths Fine Swiss Repair. And Anthony is in the chat right now. The chat
talking
is,
shit. He's
yeah,
talking
he
shit.
is.
Do you
What
see
is
that?
going
He
on,
said-
man?
So Wade corrected you and said, instead of saying, can you beat the nerds? It's like, how badly can you beat the nerds? And then Anthony chimes in and says, the question is, can the nerds beat me?
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
Anthony,
That's some smack
wow.
talk.
The gauntlet
From our
has
sponsor.
been thrown down,
Sponsor.
man.
That is amazing.
Frank, can
Holy
you
mo-
believe our fans
Yeah.
would just
Oh my God.
shade us like that?
Yeah,
With
it's like
fans-
having
with
teenage
fans
boys.
like that.
Right? We love the Nerd Herd. In fact, we wanted to start out the show tonight. Look, when we ask the Nerd Herd to show up, they show up. When we ask the Nerd Herd to share episodes, they share episodes. When we ask the nerds to hit the like button, like right now, the Nerd Herd does it. So thank you, Nerd Herd, for showing up and watching the show and hanging out with us. We had some like, I guess I can't call it mean tweets, right? But we had some like there's a guy, I wanted to bring it up and have the Nerd Herd go on. Look, do you guys remember the video from last week, right? It's here. I'm going to try to click on the video from last week. It's going to a commercial, so I don't want to show that. But the video from last week, it has the picture of the white M491 car on it. And I believe it says, are you stuck with it? That's that one.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. I think I've got it. So we had some comments on there, and there's a couple of guys. There's Jeff Jones. Here, I'm going to go see if I can show Jeff Jones. I'm going to get the picture-in-picture thing here. Okay, can we see Jeff Jones down here? I'm going to see if I can zoom. I don't know if I can zoom in on this. But Jeff Jones says, it's funny. I want to like you guys because I'm interested in the same stuff, but ellipses, like, he doesn't even do the ellipses right. Ellipses is 3 dots, right? All you needed was a comma, Jeff Jones. But no, you put a 4-dot ellipses and a space, and you started a new sentence. You got to get better. You're not Joe Rogan. This is his. So,
Wait,
so
we're not?
thanks. Yeah, who knew? I thought for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been
JP
working out. Yeah.
JP, you told me I was just like Joe Rogan.
You're just
the only
like
reason
him,
I'm on
right?
there.
So I had to respond, thanks for the genius advice. We'll try to be more like your show, Jones. Oh, that's right. You don't have one. You have 3 followers. Okay. And not like we have very many more of that. But Jeff had to come back for more. He didn't follow that thread. He had to then also do another one. He's like, show the cars more. Nobody wants to see you guys. Nobody. Also, timestamps to differentiate cars. WTF. I mean, the guy is on it, right? So I'm like, are you volunteering to do all the back end work? And but no, then another great guy, Typhoon hopped in. Typhoon 320i. Yeah. He's on Jones' side. He's on Jeff's side. He's like, after 4 years and 400 plus videos, you have 1,000 subscribers. Who do you think is right on this? I'm like, well, you're here, so that's all we need, right? We got Typhoon 320, guys. Nerd Herd, go in there and let's ratio these guys. Come on, have some fun. Come up with some ways to have a good time with these jagoffs, and you know what? The best one, we're gonna give you a dir or die. Wait a minute, I'm not even on screen. We're going to give you a dir or die beer cozy. How's that? We'll figure that out. Yep. Okay. That's not what this show is about. This show is about making predictions on cars that are listed on Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, PCAR Market, and more. We dig through these cars. We find the most interesting one. We make our predictions, and we let our guests kind of join us in that endeavor. And the Nerd Herd plays along in the chat, and you guys are awesome doing that. That's really what makes the show is the Nerd nerd herd playing along and kind of spanking our butts at this. And we're excited to have Frank along with us tonight, and we're going to talk about why, because Frank isn't just an expert or someone that knows better than us, which who doesn't. Frank is intimately related with one of the cars that we made a prediction last week. Michael Deeb, you want to introduce the first car that we made a prediction on last week?
Absolutely, JP. So you remember we covered the 1987 Porsche 911 Carrera M491, which is a works turbo look car, but this car is also an M470, meaning it is a spoiler delete package, making what is already a super rare car even rarer. Porsche made the M491 package available from 1984 through 1989. And while they made this package available on all three of the Carrera types, the Carrera Coupes, the Targas, and the Cabriolets, in 84, they made more Coupes. And each year they did, I think, basically, as a broad stroke, they made less and less M491 Coupes all the way through 89. So 87 being the first year of the G50. It was the fourth year of the Turbo Look Coupe. And then it was the first time, I think, that they offered the M470 package. I think Frank will correct me if I'm wrong on that. So by the numbers, this is a super rare car. My good friend, our good friend of the show, Sebastian Hassel, this was his personal car. He bought it off the original owner in San Francisco. The car is showing 71,000 miles. And Sebastian, over the several years that he's owned the car, has gone through it, every nut and bolt, cleaning and updating and servicing and maintaining, and honestly using the car on a regular basis. I think Sebastian's social life, which wasn't hurting to begin with, has expanded by becoming a Porsche owner and having arguably one of the coolest, rarest cars in the air-cooled community in California. And Sebastian is a go-do-it guy. So he brought the car to bring a trailer, and of course, we were going to cover it for him and not miss out on the opportunity to watch this car go. And go it went. I chimed in, JP chimed in, Frank, who's our guest, chimed in, and several other people that know him chimed in to say what a great guy and what an excellent car, endorsing this car in a way that people who don't know Sebastian were commenting that, like, my God, this car is going to break the bank because everybody seems to know it and love it. So it was interesting to see how the comments went. 23,000 views, 1,900 people following it. And when we covered it, JP, we thought for sure this car would set a new high water mark for the model and certainly meet the reserve and break the bank along the way. So without further ado, I jumped in and started the bidding at $180,000, citing that 964 wide bodies at times have brought over $200,000. And of the G body, of the impact bumper style, this is the closest thing to those really cool cars. JP came in underneath me at $175,470. And John, you'll remember we had Pete Stout of 000 Magazine as our guest third nerd on the show. Pete came in just a teeny bit more pragmatic, but certainly positive at $170,000. Frank, I'm not going to ask you. I don't want to put you on the spot, but Wade, what would you think this car would sell for if you didn't know the result from the other day? What would you guess based on the mileage, the rarity, and the bids that are in the room at 180, 175, and 170? Wade, what's your bid?
I'm shooting higher. That's a lot of attention and a lot of positive praise on this car. So I'm going to say 191, 911 and hope for the absolute moonshot for this car.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't have teased you about your optimism. Something crazy happened on the way to Hammer, JP. The bidding fizzled at just $142,000 where the car failed to sell. It did not make reserve. Only 24 bids, which was not really a good reflection of the comments and the attention the car was getting. So Frank, this car failed to sell, and $142,000 on just 24 bids. I understand you might know what happened. Tell our audience what happened to this car.
I bought it. on my fourth try, by the way. Sebastian had offered me the car 3 other times over the years. I won't, but at a 5-figure number at first, and then at a 6-figure number, increasing over time. And I will say that every time he offered it to me, I instantly accepted the offer. I said, I'll take it. And I had to buy it after reserve not met on Bring a Trailer. I'll tell you, I think this car at the top of the market was probably worth 175. But as we get to today, things are off a bit, right? Let's say that the market is uneven, right? I mean, the top cars are still going nuts. Not that this isn't a top car or one of the nicer cars. My guess was 155, to be honest. That's what I thought it was going to go for. And I think, Michael, you know what the reserve was. What was the reserve?
Yeah, so the reserve was set at $150,000, which I thought was pretty fair. If it had met reserve, somebody, the buyer would have been paying $155,000 for the car. So I think you would have been right on the money there. And I think I think BAT gave him a generous reserve, and I think Sebastian was being somewhat realistic. Let me ask you candidly. I know you had a vested interest in it. You had a friend that was looking at the car. But when the bidding stopped at 142,000, were you as surprised as I was that it quieted down so soon? I really thought this car was going to make its mark in the natural auction, and it didn't. And that I'm still puzzled with.
Yeah, I even commented in the auction that there was such volume and velocity of comments, maybe not bid number, but the type and the quality of bids all the way through 6 days. And then the comments tailored off 6 days in. The bidding obviously stopped. So yeah, I thought it was, at first I thought it was going to go for 155, but after that 6 days worth of activity, let's call it, I actually upwardly revised. I thought it was going to go 175 at one point, and I was telling my friend the same. And so when I say I bought this car, a friend of mine, individual who also happens to own that red 86 behind me, we were debating back and forth about the value and what it's worth and what it needs, which is not a lot. In fact, I think this is as close to a 35, 36-year-old car you're going to buy, 36-year-old 911, that quote unquote needs nothing. I don't think that car really exists. I think this car is very close. And at the end of the day, he said, hey, why don't we go in halvesies on it? Plan Z, if you're familiar with Spike and Paul Zuckerman at Spike's Car Radio. And I thought, that's pretty surreal. Let's do it. So obviously you and I know Sebastian outside of the auction that went down. So I'd been talking to him all week, and I essentially said, we'll take it. And he said, done deal.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Congratulations, Frank. That's awesome. I think it's going to be in really good hands with you and your buddy, who I know of through you. And I'm really excited for you. I'm happy for Sebastian that he sold the car because he's got eyes on his next project, which should be a lot of fun. JP,
but Michael, let me interject. I think how close this car, since you know what the reserve was, and you know how the BAT algorithm works. You know how close this car was to selling. I mean, 142 bid actually was what, $3,500 off?
Absolutely. And I told Sebastian that. I called him right when the hammer fell, and I said, dude, you were so close. And he goes, no, not really. And I said, actually, you were, because BAT has a protocol, and it's a math equation that's built into their platform that had that car reached about $145,500, BAT would have contributed some of the buyer's fee to the seller to make up the delta, so that reserve would have been met to the net take of the seller. And so it was really close. Even though it only hit 142, it was really only about $3,500 away from selling, and I think that would have been interesting. But in the end, since your friend was not the high bidder, I'm glad that it worked out, because I'm happier that you have the car than somebody who we don't know. So that whole thing makes me really, really happy, and congratulations. I think it's going to be really fun. I can't wait to see what you do with this one, because I know you don't, like John, like JP, you don't leave your air-cooled cars alone. You like to play with them and develop them and all that. John does that, and becoming friends with John and getting into the air-cooled stuff, he gets to sort of, like, he's inspired me to kind of mess with my cars. So I don't know, he kind of gave me permission, like, yeah, dude, you don't have to leave them all stock. My dad would have been super against modifying cars, but JP's like, no, it needs stickers and an exhaust, and you got to lower it and all these things. I'm like, sweet, I love all that shit. So I know you're cut from that same cloth. I can't wait to see what you do with the car. Congrats, man.
Well, I'll tell you, that's my third one. That's going to be my stock reference car. This 87 behind me is a 3.4 J. Lee built car. And then I got an 89 that's going to be hopefully about 2,500 pounds and about 300 horse. So it'll be 491 in 3 flavors: mild, medium, and spicy.
Nice. Very good. Very good. All right, JP, should we move on to the next car?
Well, I just wanted to get Wade's take on this car. What do you think of the result, buddy?
Yeah, knowing.
Sorry, Wade.
No, you're good. With all the information out there, it sounds like a relatively solid result, all things considered. And my question to Frank was going to be, what are your plans for a beautiful car like this? Because it seems like you have a garage full of great stuff, but it sounds like you're going to appreciate it, and it's going to be part of a already really solid collection of Porsches that you have.
Well, hold. Yeah,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to add to that question before you answer it, Frank, because to me, the idea of splitting a car, I've had people offer that many times over the years. Hey, let's go in on a car. And to me, I just like, no way. There's just no freaking way do I want to deal with that. Because it just winds up being messy when it's time to get rid of it. Or if one person wants out of it, wants the cash back or whatever, then the other person's kind of forced to come up. It just seems messy, but I could see doing it if there was a car that you really wanted and you didn't have access to something like that. Right? It was just like, the only way I can do this is if I leverage my money with someone else's money so that I can get this experience. But you have right behind you 2 more. Why would you go through the rigmarole just to have another car that's just like the ones you already have?
Well,
rigmarole.
Well,
You like rigmarole? I'm Boomer,
right?
Jason.
That was good. That was very good.
There's a guy on Pelican. His tagline is, your classic car owns you, you own your hot rod. And if you only have one car, then you're going to have to make a decision, right? And that statement could not be more true. We're going to split that car. That car's going to spend half its time in Park City and half its time in San Diego. In fact, it'll winter in San Diego and it'll summer in Park City. And by the way, neither of us, that's not our only like specialty classic collector car, whatever you want to call it. So I think it's going to work in this case versus if it's the only fun car you owned among 2 people and you lived in the same town, then you always, I think, would want to say like, I want to take it to this, I want to take it to this, right? Et cetera, et cetera. In our case, it becomes the reference car that's probably the closest to stock that we're going to end up sharing. And as mentioned before, you own your hot rod, right? So I feel freer to do what I want with this car. This car did 600 miles at the Hill Country Rally last year. Driven hard, not put away wet. We're going to be doing similar things together with this car that we're sharing.
So awesome. when your car partner goes to Arby's and spills Arby's sauce all over the interior, and he's like, right? Because look, no 2 guys are exactly the same when it comes to keeping things tidy, and there's always the kind of like the odd couple thing. There's always an Oscar. There's always the other guy. It's like, how does this not end in like just a pissed off I don't know. I'm worried for you, but I'm also really intrigued by this idea. Like Deeb would never go in halves with me on a car because he'd know better.
JP, you and I should buy a Fiat 850 Spider. and
that wouldn't be a problem because neither one of us would ever drive it because it would be just broken down in the driveway.
Exactly. It's perfect for us. Yeah.
Well, this is the beauty of having multiple copies of the same car. If something happens to one, you still got it.
You can just swap the seats out of one and hope the other he doesn't smell the Taco Bell in there. Okay.
This is an heir and 2 spares, if you will.
Yes.
Quick anecdote. In college, I had a 914-4 2-liter, and I parked it, and I got the tiniest paint chip on the top of the door, and I lost my mind. You would have think someone was talking smack about my mother, right? A week later, I totaled the car. So that was a lesson in don't sweat the small stuff. It can always be worse. So you spill on a seat, you fix the seat. I think it was Seinfeld that said on the Spike's Car Radio podcast that it's your car. If it breaks, you fix it and you move on.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, that's assuming. I mean, sure. If your partner was Seinfeld, I guess. I don't know. I think this is great. The moral of the story is don't eat Arby's in your 911 or at all, for that matter.
I thought the moral of the story was don't go in on a car with JP.
Well, I mean, who would? That'd be just crazy. All right, guys, what do you think of the results of this amazing M491 470 911? Was this well bought? Is this like the purchase, like the dream purchase? Go in with a buddy, get all the car for half the money, or is our friend Frank just heading for a dead end in the drive-through? Let us know in the comments below, and let's move on to the next car that we made a prediction on. And I will predict one thing, and I know I'll get this one right, is Frank did not buy this car either himself or with anyone else. I'm about to get. That's true. I really don't know that. I might get stumped on the own show. What's the next car, Deeb?
Frank watches the show. He probably knows his car better than you and I do.
So I could see Frank in this car, though.
Yeah. Frank, do you know Shoddy from San Francisco? Do you remember him as an R Group guy, and he grew up in the city and he sells wine? Do you know Shoddy?
Yes. Yeah, I know of him.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So great guy. JP introduced him to me. And again, I meet Shoddy and we have like 200 mutual friends from San Francisco. But my friend from Seattle introduced me to a guy across town that I never knew. So Shoddy tried to sell this car in July last year on BAT through 911R, and it failed to sell at 95,000. 911R, Avant-Garde kept the car in their Arizona facility. And a few months later, I think it was October, they brought it back to market with the exact same copy and the exact same photography. Only this time, the car made $160,000 on Bring a Trailer where it sold. Now, just a few months later, the new owner of Shoddy's car has enlisted a company called Sandbox Motors out of Los Angeles. He's consigned it through them and has entrusted them to bring it to Bring a Trailer and try to sell it, presumably to get him out of it. So what we're talking about, Shoddy's car, is a 1982 Porsche 911 SC Coupe that has been built with a twin plug 3.8, allegedly 964 derived, although as this person brought it to market, they have represented it as a 993 generation 964 motor. And people in the comments are blasting them, saying it is obviously a 964 motor. I don't know the difference between the two blocks well enough to pick up on the clues that they talk about. But all of that is to say that the consignor has not done a good job bringing this car to market. The assets, the photography are not nearly as good as this car is an alumni. There are hyperlinks to show you 911R's photography, which is incredible. So these photographs don't live up, and they're not doing well in the comments. So as we reviewed this car, we were all pretty bearish on this one, that it wasn't going to do well here. It just, I don't think it stood a chance. With that in mind, I was, again, the high bidder at $118,930. JP came in right under 100 grand at $99,911. And Pete Stout from 000 Magazine was in studio with us. It was interesting to listen to him, JP, candidly say that he likes hot rods. But obviously the elephant in the room with a hot rod is that you narrow the appeal of the car. And with that in mind, Pete was the low bidder at just $85,000. Frank, I will invite you to bid on this one because we are assuming that you didn't buy it. So what do you think this car would have done third time around in less than 8 months on BAT? What do you think the hammer fell on this one on BAT the other day?
Boy, this car's got a storied past, especially recently, right? Up on offer multiple times. You never like to see that from a quote unquote lemon perspective, right? But
right,
it is BAT and it is the Porsche market, so I'm going to roll the $125,000 dice.
There you go, high bidder. And Wade, this car is not slow. You would love this car, and we've covered it a couple of times.
Yes,
this is a car even the Persian Pillow would love. So what do you think?
Yeah, I remember this is the car that we've talked about a couple of times, right? And I know
twice.
Right. Yeah, and I remember how hesitant we were about the first 90K, no sale, weird result, and then it blew us out of the water at 160. And now it's third time's a charm, and it's not the charm. Third time's the bag of dookie here. That there's just rough comments, and this poor car is now just on the opposite side of being represented. So, I mean, 105 at best, maybe.
105?
Do you think it sells at that number?
I don't think it sells. I mean, the person has 160 in it, But I don't know, how this car doesn't dig itself out of those comments and the poor representation and whatever else it got stuck with at the closure of this auction.
Yeah. Well, 105 would have been a very good guess. I think that would put you as the winner. Our car hammered at $110,000 where it failed to sell on 30 bids. So it did get some action and it did break $100,000, which I think is interesting as a watermark, JP. But my guess is even if this guy was willing to sacrifice a few dollars to offload the car, let's just say he was trying to get out from underneath it instead of he didn't like it or he was trying to buy something else, he certainly wasn't going to make money on it. I think he overpaid for it, maybe by just a small percentage at 160 plus fees, plus shipping, whatever else he had to do to get the car to him, register it, presumably, and all this other stuff. There's no way he's getting his money out of it. So even if he was willing to take 150, I don't think that was in play. So 110 is a respectable amount of bids for a car that I would say, John, is essentially burned for the next 12 months. I don't think this car can come back to market until a calendar year has passed. Would you agree with that statement? Or do you think that he could find it, I don't know, what do you say, put it on, what is it, Ren List or something? Do you think it would work in the classifieds, or do you think he just needs to sit on it a while and take his lumps?
Well, I mean, you keep mentioning this guy as if it was a guy that bought it. This is a dealer, a flipper.
No.
Bought,
I think the dealer is consigned. I think the car is consigned with a dealer.
Oh,
I don't think the dealer bought the car. Yeah,
okay.
I do. Yeah. Because in the comments, he says we were entrusted to represent the car. Okay. So whoever it is that's selling it doesn't own it.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be stuck with it. I guess the only way you could bring this car back to market is to represent it somehow better than 911R did, which is a tall dang order, because those guys consistently take some of the best photos ever. So I don't know. I mean, getting the car out there, maybe bringing this car to a live auction would be the way to go. Like bringing this to something like Barrett Jackson or something, or Meekham's, a fresh set of eyeballs on it might make, because the people that go to the live auctions aren't necessarily the people that go to the digital auctions. So I think maybe that would be a shot, but I don't know. What do you think, Frank?
That's tough. I think you got to hold on to it for longer than a year. I mean, it's too much too recently. You got to put some time in between it. And then I don't even know about the live auction either. I think you hold on to it for more than a year, you list it on Pelican and Ren List, and then you probably got to wait a while too, depending on what you list it for.
Yeah, I mean, but when he bought it at $160, that wasn't necessarily top of the market. The market was already kind of on its way down. Wade, you got any take on this thing?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Frank. I think it's going to take more than a year for this car to shake off its bad history, which is a shame because we know it's an exciting car. I think 160 was really a surprising number that this guy bought it from. It was probably some sort of, gets caught up in the excitement of the market, gets caught up in the excitement of this car. But like you said, it really depends on what his end goal is. If 160 to him doesn't make a difference one way or another, that may be why he kept it. But this isn't going to be a car that come, June or July in the heat of the summer, you're going to do any better with all that history. The big question is even a year or two from now, is a car like this going to be worth more, arguably? And I don't know that that's even the case. I think if you wait a year and a half and you list it again online, it probably is going to have a similar results, 100, 110, 120. So at that point, you're kind of wondering economically what your money's worth, what the car is to you over the next couple of months. So it's an interesting predicament to be in, and I'm glad I'm not the guy holding the bag.
For sure, right? I don't know. I mean, I think this car, I think it's still kind of the wrong time of year. Honestly, I think I think, Frank, you got a good deal on your M491 car because I think it's still just a smidge too early to sell this stuff. I think if this guy would have waited till maybe, I don't know, April or something, getting really close to air and water, or, as the weather, because, it is an early spring. It does seem like things are warming up all over the country, but I think you need a few more weeks to kind of let people kind of break out a little bit and go, okay, I'm going to buy that hot rod. And this is this particular car does have that big engine. It does have that 964 engine, and those are always gonna be expensive. It's not just a hot. If this, I think I said it on the front side of this show on the last episode, that if this car were just an SC with a 3-liter that was a really nice 3-liter, but it was just an SC 3-liter, then yeah, I think $110, $120, 80, 90, somewhere in that range makes sense. But this car is paired with a great engine and the cool hipster look. I think it still has potential, and it has sold for 160 at one point. So getting up there a little bit more makes sense. But Frank, we actually posed this car and your car, the car that you now own, against one another with Pete Stout, and he was kind of going, yeah, they're kind of similar price points. Which one would you take? Obviously, we know which one you would take, Frank, because you bought one. But are you the kind of guy that would ever consider a hot rod like this?
Well, like I said, I'm building an 89 hot rod out of one of the 15 M491s that came. I mean, would I consider it? Yeah, I would, but I'd have to have a few other things ahead of time. But again, you own your hot rod, so you build it and you go drive the snot out of it, and if anything, that makes you feel better, right? You're not worrying about condition or mileage or what have you. So there's a certain freedom that comes with one of these types of cars, and it's just going to be interesting to see what shakes out here. Your point about maybe later in the year, but at the same time, public equity markets are volatile. It's an election year, et cetera, et cetera. It'll be interesting to see. And the market is uneven at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Yeah,
there's all kinds of other things kind of putting force on the market and where money's going. It's going to be an interesting ride over the course of the next, till November, that's for sure, at the very least. But hey, you pulled the trigger there, Frank, with all those things. I always like to say the sword of Damocles hanging over our heads. You just stroked a check for a really nice car. What made you say, yeah, why not?
Okay, so I was searching for, G50 M491 coupes, like there's less than 114 still out. There were only ever 114 imported. So we know there's at least something less than that out and still available. I missed out on a black on black 89 coupe here in Southern California back in 2018. I've never seen that car come up again. I've searched the VIN numerous times. So the reason I pulled the trigger on this 87 earlier this week or last week was I didn't want it to go away. In fact, I was lobbying my buddy. I was like, hey, you should buy it, and here's the reasons why, and here's what you should pay. And then I said, selfishly, I want first right of refusal on it, if you ever sell it. And his response was, well, why don't we just buy it together? So,
Isn't that sweet?
Oh,
yeah, it was cute.
I got a toothache. That was so
sweet. That's so pretty. All right, there you go. What do you guys think of the results of this crazy?
Hold on.
Oh, yeah, what?
Rami in the comments said, looking at this car, he said JP wishes he never sold his. Did you catch that, John?
Yeah, right. Thanks.
Thank you, Rami. Thank you, Rami. I couldn't agree with you more, baby. You're so right. JP loves covering this car, and he's just mad that he doesn't own it because he sold his. JP had a
all right, moving on. We're moving on.
With the same wheels, so good.
What the F? Okay. What do you guys think of the results of this car? Let us know in the comments below. This is a crazy outlaw that could have been in your garage. Would you have rather bought this or the 491 like Frank did? Would you pair up with a buddy to buy this car and share it? I mean, somebody mentioned that cars with trains in the background brings more money. Maybe it's a car train of some sort. I don't know. That's getting a little weird. Let us know in the comments below, and we'll move on to the last car that we made a bid on the last episode.
All right, JP. On PCAR Market, you selected for us this really interesting, authentic, one owner, 1998 Porsche 993 Carrera 4 that in 1999 went to Gemballa Motor Cars in Malibu, California, and got a 911 turbo wide body upgrade, and then a bunch of Gemballa pieces to go around, some interior pieces, side skirts, rocker panels. It got the metal quarters from the Turbo S with the scoops. Looks like, I don't think those are actually chrome wheels. They look like they're ball polished, and they polished all the paint off of them. And yet this car was equipped really cool. So the car's in Malibu. It's on PCAR Market. It's got 50,000 miles on the odometer. But looking at the the build sheet of the original car that's under there, the 993 C4 cab, motor sound package, 18-inch wheels, hi-fi sound system, lumbar support, let's see, supple leather, no big deal there, but metal doors, red brake calipers. It's a nicely equipped car, and then it's got this Gemballa stuff. Now, looking at the pictures, it looks like a toy. It just looks like a plastic toy. It does nothing for me. But knowing that it actually has provenance, so that it's an authentic one-owner car, and you're buying it with just 50,000 miles, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody spent some money on that. PCAR Market, I think, is... I don't know. I just don't think I would put it on this platform. I still think you get more eyeballs on PAT. But anyway, here we go. So the car is on PCAR Market. I said $75,000. JP came underneath me at $69,993. Pete Stout split the difference between us. He was not the low man on this car. JP, he said $72,000. Frank, I send it to you. White with a overly bright red interior, but one owner, 50,000 miles, which is fair. It's been in Malibu its entire life. And oh, by the way, the Carfax is like 4 or 5 or 6 pages long. And this car has been serviced at Beverly Hills Porsche its entire life. It has never missed a service from Beverly Hills Porsche. And yet it's got this tacky Gemballa makeover on it. And it's on PCAR Market, which is, an iffy platform at best. So, Frank, what's your bid on this car?
Boy, Cabrio is the first ding, right? The Porsche nerds don't like Cabrios. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Cabriophobes.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously modified to boot. So I'm going to try and snipe in between, I think, Pete Stout and you. I'm going to go 72,499. How about that?
72,499. That's an excellent bid. Where are you at, Wade?
I'm going to go a little higher. PCAR Market disappoints us by surprising us with such high results from time to time. This car looks like a Hot Wheels car, but other than that, somebody probably bid it up to like 77 grand. That red interior though is a lot. I mean, that is so, I can see that from space.
Yeah. Frank, look at that. That tonneau cover is made. Yeah. That tonneau cover is made of leather. That's not the Porsche one. That's a Gemballa one. Pete Stout sniped that with that catch, which I'm looking at it, and then he said it, and I was like, oh my God, it is leather. That's really weird. Wade, your bid was actually pretty good, but Frank, your bid was right on the money. Our cars, the bidding stopped on this car on PCAR Market at $73,000, where it failed to sell on just 24 bids. The car remains today in the deal tank with a buy it now price of $125,000. My first question to you, Frank, is do you think $125,000 is realistic for what you see in these images?
I think you need to find the right buyer for that. Is that buyer out there? Yeah, maybe. Are they on PCAR Market? Not yet. So you're going to have someone that just sees that and says, that's perfection. That's exactly how I would have done it in period. And perfection. They're either a trustafarian or they just sold their company or both, and then they'll do it. But I think we're going to be waiting a while on that one at 125.
Wade, what do you think?
Oh man, I almost fell out of my chair. That's a lot of money for this car. I don't know if the right buyer
which is a lot of money for the car.
The buy it now price.
The buy it now price. What do you think of the actual bid, the result of the auction?
think the results are fine. The Nerd Herd was chiming off there saying that this was a $50,000 car. So they all think that it's $25,000 less than it was even bid to. And whoever owns this or representing it thinks it's worth almost twice as much as the bid ended at. So, I think somewhere in the middle is fine. 70, 75K for this car. I don't think a 6-figure buyer for this car is out there. I think that's the wrong car for the wrong audience at the wrong price. But I, know very little. I couldn't justify that for this car. And I know just a smidge about Porsches and I couldn't,
Well, let me ask you this. Could you buy that motor, transmission, and those brakes for 50 grand? I don't think so. Not in today's market.
Well, I mean, hold on a second. How many miles does this thing have on it?
You said
50,000.
50,000. Yeah. I mean, it's a 993 cab. I mean, and everybody knows I love cabs. But I mean, 993 cabs with low miles are about 60 or 70 grand. So Yeah, you could go out and buy a cab right now and just toss the body if all you want is the guts out of it. That you could do right now all over Pelican or Renlist or Auto Trader. You could probably even find a 993 that's clean that you get a good powertrain out of it. The thing that's interesting to me on this car that we talked about before too is the fact that it's been made a wide body. And that's very difficult to do. And this was done by Gemballa. This is an actual Gemballa. This isn't a Gemballa lookalike. This isn't just a, somebody that just, buggered up their 993. There are some people that find provenance in the Gemballa name. I'm not one of them. I don't like the look, but I actually still think that it would be kind of cool if you do like cabs. They didn't make any wide body cabs in the 993. This would be a good car if you could get it at a reasonable price at the $70,000 or $80,000 range, not the 125. But if you could get it, pay a little bit of a premium because it has the arches and, pull the stupid side skirts off. Even Pete Stout agreed with me on that one. Pull those rocker panels off, change the wheels, or just keep the wheels and make them, make them silver instead of chrome, and then just change the front nose to just a regular turbo nose, and change out maybe the seats and the steering wheel or something like that to offset all that burgundy, and you've got a pretty cool 993 wide body cab that no one else is going to have and doesn't look too crazy like this one does. It wouldn't take that much. You're not talking about super deep, surgery here. What do you think of that, Frank?
Well, as far as Gemballas go, when you say not too crazy, that could be the most subtle Gemballa ever made.
Yeah,
so actually,
it really is.
Yeah, and then number two, that's Radwood royalty, the way the car sits right now. So
yes.
if you're into Radwood stuff, 80s and 90s, and who isn't? Obviously, I likes me some 80s. If that's your jam, then buy that car and roll it like it is, and you will be parked right up front probably at the next Radwood.
Yeah, that's what's kind of wondering what Wade was going to think, because he's a younger generation. These cars are a little closer to things that maybe would have been cool. Because this car probably wasn't built in 97. This car was probably, when all the Gemballa stuff was done to it, was probably somewhere in the early aughts. So that's a little bit more nostalgic for a guy like Wade, no?
I mean, yes and no. There are some cars out there where the Gemballa branding and build is interesting and worthwhile and actually kind of falls within my generation of finding it cool, but this one isn't it. And to be honest, if you didn't know it was a Gemballa, you would think it was just kind of this quirky Hot Wheels looking custom Porsche thing that doesn't really match. And like one of the comments said, is very within the, sorry to say, New Balance crowd of people who are just like, just a little over the top. So like I said, I don't know who the buyer of this car is. I think whoever owned this car, the one owner, really loved it, and maybe at the time when Gemballa was a more popular thing, or in the moment, they put the money in and thought it was an investment or thought it was cool. But now I think it's kind of past its time, and I don't really think there's an audience for this car, and certainly not for a six-figure amount.
Wick's Garage out there, he's going, RWB it, and you'll get $150,000, but it's going to cost you $150,000. The thing is, why would you? It's already wide. That's the thing. It's not as wide as it. If you're going to do an RWB thing, get a cheap 993 that you can get for $50,000, and then cut that up and make it an RWB. But this one's already that's the one thing. That's the one valuable part of this car, is that it's already had the wide fenders put on it. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Is this guy going to be stuck with this car until it is the 2080s at $125,000, or should he have just taken the $70-something thousand that it was bid up to, or is he right to hold on to this thing? Should he try a better platform? Do you guys think platform made any difference?
Yes, I do. I actually think this car with the provenance, I think this car should be in a live auction, and then some old boomer drinking Chardonnay will think it's very special and spend six figures on it. I don't think this car should have been on an online auction. So that's my opinion.
I just, well, there you go. What do you guys think of the results of this Gemballa cab? Are you too much of a cabriophobe to own something like this? Let us know in the comments below. And we are going to be right back with brand new predictions. Stick around. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you gotta call our friend Steve at Godden, this guy. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for, Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. If you don't subscribe to Bid Nerds on YouTube right now, I'm gonna shoot this 997. If you said, wait, that's a 996, you're a nerd. So subscribe to the new YouTube channel, Bid Nerds. Hey guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if Bid Nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip-top shape. Our Smiths, fine Swiss repair. And we are back. Fine Swiss repair. You got your watch ready to roll, send it up to Our Smiths. Anthony will get you on time. All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. We've got some new predictions to make, and the cars tonight are, well, they're interesting. Let's get right to the list. Michael Deeb, what's the first one we got?
So the only car I got to pick tonight was this car here, 1973 Datsun 240Z with a 4-speed manual that is on Bring a Trailer. Out of Denver, Colorado. Our car is showing, and they are representing it as a 32,000-mile example. 2.4-liter inline six, 4-speed manual transmission. The big thing here that I like, if the mileage is to be believed to be accurately low, what I'm really digging about this car as a sort of closeted Japanese fanboy is that the car is Kilimanjaro white with a black interior that has red vinyl upholstery. I am digging this. To me, I think all Japanese sports cars should be like the very first NSX Type R was white with red racing seats. This car is kind of that sort of heralded Japanese colorway that I think is really cool and indicative of some of the finest, most rare examples of Japanese cars that we've seen take on the cars from Europe and America in racing competition and the homologation specials that they've spawned. This car looks to be in really good original condition. It's got little mud flaps. Wade, check out that over and under dual exhaust out the driver's side back. That sort of like over and under shotgun style. I really like this. I've never wanted a 240Z. I've never believed that I would be happy with a single cam motor, which is ironic. I know. I get it. I read the room. But if I had to have one, if somebody said, Deeb, you got to get one, I would choose this one over all the others. I love the colorway. I like the condition of it. I like that it's sort of unfettered. This one really turned me on. And with the low miles, I thought it might do well. Ironically, since I selected this car, the bidding on it hasn't really moved. So now I'm not sure if it's going to have the strong finish I initially thought it was when I selected it. But JP, I send it over to you. I honestly can't remember. Have you ever owned a 240Z, or did you have a buddy, like a close friend, that you got like some real seat time in one? I feel like I've ridden in a bunch of 240Zs, but I don't really think I don't have any history with this car, any of them, the 260 or the 280, this sort of generation of the Z, not like the later ones. But what about you? Would you give it up for a 240Z, or are we beyond that? You'd rather spend your money on an old Volkswagen?
Yeah, I mean, so they were everywhere growing up. This was kind of the sports car du jour because they were cheap back in the late 80s. If you were a high school kid and you could carry the weight of the insurance cost because it was kind of high because it was a two-seater, sports car. This was a tough car to get, but if you could carry that, or if your parents were cool, this is the car you got. It was this or a Celica, the two-door Celica fastbacks of the 70s. They were all over the place. These are, they're fun cars, but no, I have never owned one. Always kind of wanted to and wish I had at some point when they were still inexpensive, but now the prices on them have gone so high that I just don't see myself ever pulling the trigger on one, because they're just too expensive for what it is. Wade, what do you think of these?
Yeah, I think these are really cool, and they're definitely having their time to shine. I know of some people who have these cars and have enjoyed them. I actually know of a gentleman who has about a dozen of these Survivor super low mile example in a warehouse that looks very similar to this. And I was just scrolling through my phone to see if maybe I knew of the car, and I'm not going to insinuate one way or another that I do, but there are cars out there that are super low miles that are very collectible. And this is a really nice example. It's not a very interesting example of this car. It's pretty, boring for what it is. But I think right now these cars are finding their time. They have their buyers. I think more than anything right now, they're a bit speculative because, let's be honest, 5 or 6 years ago, was anybody going to spend 20 grand on this or 30 grand on this? Probably not. But now, if you have a super low mile, clean example like this, even for as kind of boring as it may seem, people are willing to pay a surprising amount of money for a car that, not too long ago was quite unassuming.
Frank, how about you? What do you think?
Boy, I don't know that I'm the person to ask. I wasn't allowed to like anything but German cars. But I do know that Japanese cars are hot and have been for a while now, right? So I don't know what they've done recently. I would like one if I had everything else. I always said if I had a big enough budget and a big enough garage, I would have one of everything. But if I were to have one of these, I'd probably want one that was a bit built and hot rodded up a bit, and probably something in. I get that this is the signature color combo, but I'm tired of white cars now. I have two, so.
That was easy.
All right, Deeb, what's it going to bring?
All right, JP. So the average price that these things are going for is in like the high $30,000 range. Our car is sitting at $25,500 with still 3 days to go. You might say that looks really good, but I will let you know that $25,000 is just on 4 bids. Our car just isn't getting a lot of action. It's only 1,300 people watching it, and the car hasn't even touched 9,000 views. I thought the signature colorway, which is not common on 240Zs to the best of my knowledge, would bring more attention to it. We see S2000s bring the same money for similar miles all across the board. But every time you and I cover a white one, that car brings 20% more money because it's white with a red interior. So I thought that might be the case here. And like I said, as a fanboy, I thought that's what was going to happen. I still think this car will do better than the average price, but not by much. So instead of $38,000, I think this car will bring maybe an extra $6,000. I'm going to give this car $44,000. But again, when I saved it, I thought this car was going to bring 50 or more. That is definitely not going to happen. JP, am I going to be the high man at 44? Or are you going to come in way underneath me like you always do?
I'm going to park it right behind you because I don't know. I like this car. I love them when they don't have the bumpers. I like these when they're modded. I just don't really like them as they sit.
Like Frank said. Yeah,
bringing it low and a livery on this thing because it's white, a big stupid meatball on the side and some Piri Correct stickers all over it. Lower it, pull the bumpers, make it a death trap. I'm all about it. But I don't think I'd pull the trigger. 25 grand is the most I would pay for something like this. Not because I don't think they're worth more. It just at that point, once you start getting 30, 40, there's so many other options. But I am going to, what'd you say? 45 or 40? I'm sorry.
44. 44.
I'm going to go 39,240. And
39,
hand it off to Wade.
Man, Michael Deeb, you always anchor me a little higher than I originally think, but I got to stick.
My job. It's my job to make you as uncomfortable as possible.
I know that's the thing. I debated back and forth if this car would finish with a 3 in front of it, and now I'm like, does it have a 4? I don't know.
I'm optimistic.
I think you
foolishly optimistic. Yeah.
I think this car. I don't think this car breaks 30. I think it ends up at $29,750.
Wow.
At the end of the day, like, is this the 40 or 50K example of this car? I don't necessarily think so. I personally know of cars like this that have way fewer miles. I've seen them. So I don't think this is the best example of this car out there.
Yeah.
Frank, where are you at?
That's a good take, Wade. Go ahead, Frank.
Well, yeah, I got a California caveat. I don't know if this car is California, can be registered in California. If it is
73, yeah.
Say, okay, and then that's the case, then it is, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm going to go, I'll go 39,240. Actually, you know what? I'll go 4240. I'll say it'll break 40,000 since it's able to be registered in California and
Very
other
good.
states
All
that
right.
require those.
Man, he comes on our show and tries to steal my bid. What the heck?
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah, he's taking
himself
Rochelle to dinner tomorrow
Yeah,
night. He's got your wife and your
dang.
dog.
Man,
He's coming for your
what's
cars.
going on my bids? All right, there it is. Everybody's got their bids on. The nerd herd is all over the place. Ross out there in New Zealand. I don't know. Maybe did he step on on some kind of sea urchin or something like that? What is it? The coral reef or whatever? Because he's at 42,240. Are they worth a bunch more there? Chris Carbine at 35. Christian's at 34. Gerd, where was Gerd at? Gerd's at 39,240. He took my bid, so he agrees with me, and he's always right. So that's a good sign. Buddha's at 40. So so our highest is at somewhere almost 50, and then his low is like 30, low 30. So
I think Wade's the low man, and Wade might be onto something. Like right now,
Yeah.
the tea leaves don't look good for this lot.
When does
but
this
if
close?
in 3 days from now. But if
All
the
right,
mileage,
that's a long time. That's a long time.
if the mileage is to be believed, and people agree with me that the colorway is rare, I would think somebody that a few people might step up and fight over it a little bit, but we shall see. I'm glad we kind of covered it because we don't do a lot of.
If it were a
old
Porsche,
Japanese
we know
cars.
it would darn near double in the last
Sure.
last hour. So if it's at 25 now, getting up to somewhere in the high 40s makes sense. Ross seems to think these are easily up to $50,000 US. For a good low mileage one, and this one is a low mileage one. So yeah, let us know what you think in the comments below. If you're not watching this live, if you are watching it live, do it in the chat right now. Have you guys in the chat, have you guys hit the like button? I know a bunch of you guys have. If you haven't done that already, please do so now so this thing gets served to some more nerds, because we are trying to grow the nerd herd, and it's a lot more fun having you guys in the mix, playing along with us. Ace Pilot's coming in at 35 all day long for a boring car, he says. Chris Spinelli's at 36. So we're getting late bids coming in, but let's go ahead and move on to the next car. So Deeb, I know
JP, I got it. I'll take it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, JP picked a couple of cars for us to juxtapose and sort of compare and contrast to one another.
Well, hold on. I'm gonna hop in there because I really only picked one car. So the first car on the list is the car that we're going to bid on. We don't have to bid on the other ones, but I do want to kind of compare the other ones to this one because there's a bunch of other stuff at the same time. So go ahead and introduce that first car. Sorry to interrupt.
All right. Well, so the first car that JP selected is on PCAR Market. It is a 2011 Porsche 911 Speedster. So this is a 997.2 Carrera cab that has been made by the factory into a Speedster. What that entails is taking the Carrera and giving it essentially some bespoke bodywork and some optional interior flair. The big news is here I think it is a lower raked windshield with a bespoke custom top and sort of this hard tonneau cover off the back of the car. This was also one of the first times in the United States we were treated to a set of Fuchs style wheels, but of modern spec. I think these are 18-inch wheels and tires, and it looks like this car is wearing carbons. Unfortunately, even though this car has the Hot Rod GTS drivetrain, a 3.8 that's putting out 405 horsepower, unfortunately, most of the boomers that could afford this car all opted for the 7-speed PDK transmission, which I think is a travesty, personally. Even though it's a good gearbox, if this car is really to be believed as a speedster, meaning the ultimate driving car, I think they should have been manual only with a 6-speed. Here's where it gets really interesting. A 997.2 Porsche 911 GT3 was just about $120,000 car before options. And if you opted for a GT3 RS, that car would have set you back in 2011 about $150,000 before options. The base price on these cars, JP, were like $185,000, and you didn't get any performance to match the outrageous bill for the car. These cars, I think, suffered by being compared to the two cars I just mentioned. And as such, I just remember, along with my buddy Jeff Harley, who worked at Porsche at the time, we were just shaking our heads at this car. Plus that interior with the blue and the checkered on the seats, it just seemed pretentious. JP, the way you criticize cars today as having too many radiuses, I feel like Porsche jumped the shark with this car. And it makes me so sad because the 997, especially the .2, turns out I think history is going to be really kind to this generation of the car, especially the .2s, because we don't have to talk about failing engines. I think what we could talk about is sort of the last real analog feel to the 911 cars. These cars still feel small. They still feel tossable. They give great feedback, even though all the cars that have come since are supposed to be better. I think history is going to be kind to these cars, and maybe will be for the Speedsters as well. Certainly, values for these cars have gone crazy because they made so few of them. But again, I just remember shaking my head at this car, going, "I got my GT3 and I saved 50 grand in the process. Like, you couldn't give me the Speedster. I would take the GT3 all day long." I don't think it hurt the car. I still think they sold, but they certainly weren't critically acclaimed. And I don't, like, you and I talk about 89 Speedsters all the time, and we look occasionally at what 964 Speedsters are doing, but the 997 Speedster we never talk about. So here's a car that's on PCAR Market, offered out of Spring, Texas, showing just 2,852 miles on the odometer. In the colorway, I will say this was the launch car's color. So most of the people that ordered the Speedster ordered the car in this color, which I think is called True Blue. Is that the name? Frank, does that ring a bell with you? Do you know the name of this color?
I do.
I think it's weird because it's not Voodoo Blue, it's not Club Blue, it's not Mexico Blue, it's certainly not Riviera. I think it's called Pure Blue. That's the color. So they offered it in Pure Blue, which I imagine was a new recipe. And then I would say 3 out of 4, 75%. That's my guess. Just feels like 3 out of 4 997 Speedsters are this color. And I'm one of the weird guys that loves a blue car. I like a blue car, but this blue doesn't do anything for me. And miss me with the blue seat backs and the blue checkers on the seats and the blue vents. It's just not doing anything for me. Here's where it gets interesting. Our car closes tomorrow, and it's not even to 50% of MSRP. And these cars have been selling for 150% to 200% of MSRP. So JP, I sent it over to you. You selected the car. I assume we were going to talk about this one first before we look at the juxtaposition of the other car that we have teed up. But it's not doing well on this platform, and I think the color is boring for the car. In my opinion, if you got one in any other color, it'd be 100% more interesting than this one. So JP, I toss it over to you, a pure blue, low mileage Speedster in an unfortunate color with the wrong gearbox.
All right. So a couple things to kind of sort out here. The color, whether you like it or you say, 3 out of 4. Well, they only came in 3 colors. They came in blue, they came in white, and they came in Guards red. That was it. The only way you could get a different color is if you did a paint to sample. So from the factory, that was it. And they all had this, the checkers on the seat thing was just totally silly, and the color match dashway. As much as I like busting on the pleated pants PCA members, you cannot blame the person that bought this car for the transmission either, because they only came with PDKs. This car was not available with a manual at all. It was not sold with a period. You couldn't.
I think I forgot that.
Yeah, you can't get one, and that's really the big question. Is like everybody talks about it, Anthony is on here saying this is, Speedster is the only way to do a convertible. I know he's a cabriophobe, but, he's right. I don't know why all 997s convertibles weren't like this. Like, why did they even bother? They all not, because no one ever uses the back seat in a 997 convertible. I know I drove one today. I own a 997 convertible, and with 3 pedals and 6 speeds. And I would love, this would really be my dream car if they actually made it with 3 pedals, but they didn't, in Porsche's infinite wisdom, because we've talked about it. When the PDK came out, they were so proud of it. They were trying to shove it down everyone's throat, just like they did with the 991, GT3 in that you could only get it with a PDK. They were so sure that was going to change everything. And of course, now they finally figured it out, and you can get all these great cars with manuals. The 991.2 Speedster only comes with a 6-speed, right? So that's the way you're absolutely right. That's the only way this car should have been. And this car it's essentially a GTS. It is a GTS with a PDK that looks better. Wade, what do you think of these cars? You ever seen one?
Not in person, unfortunately, but I've seen this very blue example of this particular car for sale out and about in a number of different capacities over the years. You kind of have to weigh it two ways, right? Because the car as it sits is what it is. It's not the most driver focused, and someone just fell out of their chair out there, but it's not the most interesting car to drive. It's not very driver focused. It's arguably, like, I would say, not even a product of its time visually. It kind of looks like a dated car, even for it being released in whatever it was, 2011. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of, not really the Porsche that I think most people who are driver focused would be interested in. But at the same time, this is a rare car. They only made 356 or whatever it was. Yep. So you kind of have to value it as a New Balance wearing collector point of view that nobody's ever going to touch it or breathe on it or drive it. But I also don't think that this is like the creme de la creme. Like, I don't think this is the collector Porsche that people would specifically want. It's not going to be their first collector Porsche. It's probably going to be their 8th or 9th, and they're going to be looking for a super low mile example. And it is a very speculative Porsche at the end of the day. So it's a really weird car. It's very interesting, but it just kind of is what it is. And I think the potential pool of buyers for this car has got to be a lot lower than similar 6-figure cars, other Speedster examples, or other cars that are just more interesting to have and drive.
Frank, what do you think of these?
Well, I just fell out of my chair. It's interesting because, the Speedster ethos, right, was not PDK. It was not, actually, it wasn't even wide body, right? I love an 89 Speedster. Obviously, I love a factory wide body or two. But these cars, to me, it's almost like every generation of Speedster has gotten less and less from the original ethos. I would prefer this car, obviously with a manual, but since that wasn't an option, I'd prefer this car with the one-piece, like Recaro pole position type seats that came on, at least the 996, the earlier version.
The 964,
Yeah. So would I kick this out of bed? Probably not, but it depends on what I could get it for.
Yeah, I got to disagree with Wade. This is a very driver-focused car. This is a GTS, and PDKs, as much as I would prefer a manual, PDKs are still pretty damn awesome. The suspension on this thing, and this is an epically good car if you like the 997. And I got to tell you, 997s, to me, are the sweet spot. But yeah, so the big question is how much will this bring? It's interesting, Frank, you brought up the 964, and, every Speedster after the 89, like the 89 Speedster, the G-Body Speedsters, all of them in America were ordered with your 491 wide body. That car was originally spec'd as a narrow body car. The most rare G-Body Speedsters are the single digit handful of them that were actually ordered without the wide body kit. But they were originally planned to be a narrow car. But everyone said, oh, well, I'm going to do the Speedster. I'm going to do it wide. Everybody checked that box. I don't know if there's a single narrow body one in America. Someone in the comments can let me know about that. If there is, it's got to be someone like Seinfeld has one, if anyone does. But you're right. Yeah. So, all right, let's get to the numbers. What do we think this car will bring? Michael Deeb.
So it's interesting, JP. 997 Speedsters on average sell in the mid $300,000 range. Our car on PCAR Market, I was wrong. It wasn't 185. This car's MSRP was $204,000, 205 at the bottom of the MSRP. So it's 204 for the Speedster, and then with delivery and less than $1,000 in options, this car stickered for $205,000. Our car closes tomorrow on PCAR Market, showing less than 3,000 miles, and it's sitting at just $106,161 on only 3 bids. JP, I don't think the tea leaves are looking very good for this car.
And hold on, before you give a number, just real quickly, I put this other link in here just to show there's another one available on the market that's closing tomorrow.
Yes. So on Bring a Trailer is the exact same car. This car is showing 2,200 miles. It's in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. This car is number 319 out of 356 examples. and this car stickered for $214,000. What I like about this, JP, it's not that I love yellow over blue. I just like that the yellow on the 997 Speedster is rare. And if you can drop in on a photograph of the interior, somebody optioned out of all the yellow flare on the interior. This car has an all-black interior, including the later 997 steering wheel that is also all black. And I think this makes the interior of this car way classier and way more inviting to me, a lot less candy and plastic and boy racerist. I think this car takes itself a little more seriously, and I really dig it. But here's the rub, John. This car, which also closes tomorrow, but on Bring a Trailer, is at $325,000 instead of the 106 of the PCAR Market car, and that's just on one bid. So that might be the knockout punch. We will have to wait and see. But on the blue car, John, the car that we're reviewing, the car that's on PCAR Market and has an uphill battle, I don't think that car is going to break 300. I put my bid at 198, and I think at $198,000, that car is well below market value, so that's going to be a failure to sell. So I'm going to give you the blue car on PCAR Market at $198,000 FTS, and it winds up in the deal tank for probably $350,000, $360,000. Just as an aside. So, John, 198 to you. Where you at?
Yeah, the big question is, will it break 200 on PCAR Market? As much as I like to ish all over PCAR Market, and they do just an awful job in general, I do think it's going to break the 200. I just clicked on Gerd, and he's right there where I was going to go. So I'll go 134,997 and
you
pass
mean 234.
I'm sorry, 234. My bad. Thank you for correcting me. That was my intention. Yeah, I think it's going to get over 200, but I don't think it's going to sell at that. It's not. I think some people might bid in here. There's got to be a reserve, right? It's not a no reserve car, correct?
No, it's a car with a reserve.
With a reserve, yeah.
And my guess, JP, is that this guy thinks he's sitting on a $340,000 to $360,000 car.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And and the thing is, if it was on BAT, he would be. This car would get over $300,000 over on BAT. Ain't gonna happen here. What do you think, Wade?
Yeah, I think I'm on the same side of that coin. Under 300,000 for the bids. Unfortunately, this car is deserving of 325,000, arguably elsewhere. Maybe on Bring a Trailer, or maybe as a regular buy it now sale. I think it probably stalls out at like 269,000. Just some people throwing in some bids to see what happens, and it's going to end up in the deal tank at like $340,000, which is still a little bit high, but at that point it doesn't matter.
Right. And Frank, where are you at on this car? What do you think?
I'm going to keep it simple. We'll go straight $250,000, reserve not met.
Reserve not met. What do you think this car is worth?
290.
290. You don't think it breaks 300? Do you think the paint to sample is what's bringing that the yellow one so far over the top?
Well, I think it's that, because obviously, listen, that's the new hot. Well, not even the new hotness. That's been the hotness for a while now, right? Yeah. And then you got the BAT effect, right? So I think just those two things.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Deeb. Hop in.
No, I was just agreeing. Fair play. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned the original price, Deeb, that the MSRP was like 205, 209 or something like that, and the paint
205 on the blue.
Yeah, and the paint to sample is like only 10 grand or something. Nowadays, paint to sample can be $50,000 or more. Marge Maple hopping in with old Porsches are trash. What's up, Marge? Welcome to the Nerd Herd. Where'd that come from? Yeah, 300 for that? Really? She's like, get out of here. I'm over that stuff. Everybody say hello to Marge in the comments. And have you guys hit the like button yet? If you haven't done that already. All right, what do you guys think this car will bring? Let us know in the comments below. I did have another car I was going to mention. There was a Speedster that was that Mustang, but we'll save that for another time. Michael
Speed yellow as an option on the yellow card, JP, was $5,500 in 2011.
Oh my God, that's funny. That is crazy, right? Well, hold on. Okay, now that I brought it up, now I got to do it. You could go get this silly thing. Deeb, what do you think of this car right there? Boom.
Yeah, pretty wild. I didn't even know this car existed. And that car, JP, I looked up the price on that car. I just X'd out of it because I thought we were moving on. But the MSRP is on that car. It's like $110,000 or something. My guess is, JP, it's a niche car, and there's only a handful of people that want it. However, I don't think Saleen has these cars built and on the ground. So I do think that particular car right there will bring over MSRP, because a guy who wants one can get that one now. I think this car only has 200 miles on it, John, if I'm remembering it correctly. So I think the attraction is there, that you can have it now and not have to wait 6 months until your name comes up, and then 6 months later for them to build it. It's a Saleen that's on the ground, and everything about that car looks custom. So I do think it's kind of cool. It's probably fast as hell. Saleen always makes exciting cars that handle, even if they have the integrity of a box of tissue. But yeah, probably a lot of fun, and I'm sure somebody will overpay to get that one that's there right now, because it's still a brand new car. Like I said, it's only got a couple hundred miles on it. It's not all used up. If that car had 4,000 miles, I don't think it would hit MSRP. But like it's sitting there, and usually, John, too, Saleen numbers their cars. That's a big thing with him. I think he's always numbered his cars. So just getting a Saleen built car is kind of an occasion. There's also the thing that car's on BAT, and somebody like me didn't know that car existed, and is like, oh, have to have it. And that guy might just bid 150 and take it now. So we'll see.
Frank,
Good
look,
call.
It's got 3 pedals. Which one would you rather have? The Saleen
Seriously.
or the Porsche?
Well, considering the Saleen will probably be at least half the price, and with an additional pedal, it's got to be the Saleen.
Oh, wow. How about you, Wade? What do you think?
Oh, give me the blue Porsche. That Saleen's going to be worth 50% in a year and a 50% 2 years from now. So I wouldn't touch the Saleen. So there's only 10 of those. That's number 8 of 10 with an MSRP of $153,000 for that one.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it's a $150,000 Mustang, or whatever it is. I can't deal with Saleen.
Yep. Yeah. Probably more fun to drive, though. All right, let's move on. What do you guys think these cars will bring? Let us know in the comments below. All right, we got one more car to make a prediction on. What do we got, Michael Deeb?
All right, JP, you selected for us an electric car, a 2022 Porsche Taycan 4 Cross Turismo. This EV wagon is all-wheel drive and puts out about 469 horsepower. The car is in a very polarizing coral ice blue exterior wrap, which is really, really weird. The car also suffers from having 13,500 miles on it. And the car is way up in Parker, Colorado. And I don't know if you looked at the Sierras lately, but they got like 10 feet of snow overnight. So JP, really interesting. I don't know. You're in and out of God and Porsche all the time. I'm really out of touch with how easy it would be if you wanted to place an order for one of these cars, or if you could just go down to your local dealer and pick one up off the lot. If that's the case, I don't think this car is worth very much money at all, in comparison to its MSRP, which I think is on this car. I'll have to look that up while you talk about it a little bit more. But when I look at this, JP, when you select a car like this, which is on Cars and Bids, by the way, all I see is a used car. This is just metal to me. And in my opinion, I still feel like for the average Joe, it's too soon to own an electric car. I think it's too much work. It's too much planning. It's too involved. I think you have to be really type A to be somebody that qualifies to comfortably own an electric vehicle for right now. Like if a cousin of mine's like, I think I should get an electric car, I'd be like, absolutely not. Wait another 4 or 5 years. Then I think the world will make it easier to own an EV. I think for the average person, it's still too much work. And while I love this car, I don't love the color, and with the mileage, I don't see any value here. So I'm going to lob it back up to you while I try to figure out what the MSRP is on this. I'll lob it back to you. Why did you select this? I'm going to read it to you real quick. 122,600 MSRP on this Taycan that was born in black. I think this car would do better if it was still in black. So JP, why did you pick this car?
Well, there's a lot going on. I mean, we started off the show by saying if you bid on an EV right now on BAT, are you just burning your money, right? Because EVs were crazy hot like a nanosecond ago, right? And now all the dealerships that have all the brands other than Tesla that carry EVs are stuck with them. They have piles and piles and piles of them. And the big news this week was that Apple, who had plans to make an Apple iCar, essentially, they scrapped that. So that's a big thing in the EV world. That's a huge signal to the car manufacturers of the world that, okay, maybe we are finally reassessing what the heck we're doing with these darn cars. I agree with you, everything you said about, owning one of these is very difficult, especially if it's not a Tesla, because, they just don't charge. The problem is, unless you have the charger at home and all you do is drive from home and back, we've talked about this and I don't really want to get into all that stuff. But the point is that there's a massive shift going on in the EV world, and most EVs are taking a dump. Of all the EVs that exist, however, I think this is the single best one there is. That shooting brake back end is so hot, and I really, really, really wish this car was practical and actually worked, and you could actually make this part of your life. But the fact is, you just can't. Wade, you are the Tech Daily guy. What do you think about Apple saying that they're not going to do the EV car thing? And what do you think that says to the market in general?
Yeah, it's interesting. Apple spent more than 10 years and billions of dollars, supposedly, trying to develop some sort of actual hardware, some sort of electric vehicle. But in the meantime, they have been putting CarPlay in every car. And I think they probably realized it's just easier to do it from a software standpoint and to not mess with the EV market right now or perhaps ever. And to your point, JP, the EV market is sort of teetering. There were a lot of EVs that were very hot for a very long time, right? We saw Rivians selling for over MSRP for a long time. We saw Lucid selling for crazy money for a very long time. And I was actually at an EV event where Porsche brought this car a couple of years ago, and we couldn't drive it, but they brought it. It was a Euro spec example, and they said that it was coming. We got to kind of play around with it a little bit, and we drove the e-tron platform and some other cars. But at the time, this was a very intriguing car because the shooting brake, the wagons, they haven't done well in the US, and they're like kind of having this resurgence. But this is an electric Porsche wagon, and arguably not on like the best EV platform. The Porsche and e-tron interior, the technology, all the stuff that goes along with this car is like, it's not the most luxurious or tech focused, in my opinion, having driven a number of EVs now. So it's kind of an obscure car. I think from an EV perspective, there are some challenges, and this is just a car that is like so niche that just, I can totally see why this car is in Colorado, because I know who's driving this car. It's some rich young guy who smokes weed and enjoys snowboarding. And that's why they wrapped it blue. It's just,
Carl.
Yeah. And so it's weird. And I unfortunately think, for as cool as this car is as a wagon, as a Porsche wagon, as this really interesting practical thing, it's just really not going to do well. And I am certain that over the next probably 2 or 3 years, this car will disappear, unfortunately. And JP, you may be able to get this for like, 50 grand, but you're going to have to figure out how to spend 5 grand installing a charger somewhere.
Frank, would you buy it if it was wide? What do you think?
Boy,
It is wide.
I know the Cross Turismo is off the menu for the Panamera. Is it still on the menu for the Taycan?
The Cross or the
Sport Turismo. It's the Sport Turismo on the Panamera.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would contest that. JP, am I wrong? But if you want to order a Panamera Sport Turismo, you can. It's just the dealers don't stock them. They don't have to. The dealers aren't forced to buy them, but I think if you want to order one, you can still order one. Is that true, John? Do you know?
Call
about
our
that?
friends at Godden Porsche and Godden Classic Las Vegas. They can answer that question. I cannot, because I honestly don't care. A Panamera is not something on my radar. If someone wants one, I get it. Talk to Godden; they'll let you know. But yeah, the shooting brake thing. So I'm sorry, Frank. What were you saying?
Well, hey, listen, I'm a old school Audi guy, and it's all about cool wagons and fast wagons and et cetera. But I think we can all understand and appreciate that is the teeniest market segment, right? I mean, there's a reason why you just don't see them here in the U.S. Thankfully, you see RS6s now and E63 AMG-S's and what have you, but it's so rare. Would I have this car? Boy, probably at half price, maybe, but even then, that would be a stretch.
Well, so our good friend Kelly Smith, also up in Idaho, the Spud Syndicate is where it's at tonight. He owns this car. He actually owns this car in this color, but like actually in this color, or a color, the real color that this is trying to be. And he absolutely loves it. But at the same time, Kelly, like he says in here on his comment below, he has a bunch of other really great cars. And so when you have options, I feel like this is, he says that he uses it to run around town, and that kind of makes sense, right? I mean, they really are a golf cart. If you live in the city and you don't have to go anywhere very far, it kind of makes sense. If you commute, it's pretty cool to be able to not ever have to go to the gas station, right? But hey, there's Kelly saying hello. What's up, buddy? So yeah, it's great to have him chime in here. It's just, as your only car though, I just don't here's something that I do want to mention though. We are one gas crunch away from EVs being worth all the money, like literally tomorrow. Frank, you mentioned there being all kinds of other crazy stuff going on in other vertical or in other markets, like, whether it's the stock market or Bitcoin or any of that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of things going on in the world, the election, wars, all the political stuff that's all kind of wrapped up into, there happens to be a war in the Middle East, and we could wake up tomorrow, and I'm not trying to be the sky is falling guy, but we could literally wake up tomorrow and there could be just all out war in the Middle East, right? That is on the table right now. I sure hope that's not the case, and I'm not saying that it's gonna happen, but something like that is plausible. And gas prices going up to $7 a gallon, guess what? Those EVs are shooting off of it. If you've got a Mercedes dealership and it's full of, Q whatever they call their EV things, they're all gone in like 30 days. Instantly, because I remember when in 2008 when we had the big crash, and at the same time they had the cash for clunkers thing that also coincided with like record high gas prices. And if you had an SUV, you were screwed. If you had hybrids for sale or cars that were really good on gas mileage, those were all gone. They were having no problem selling those, but all the big manufacturers like Hummer went out of business because they were all sucking up the fuel. What do you guys think? Is this an opportunity to buy the dip for EVs?
You said the magic word, JP, the H word, hybrid. Hybrid is the answer. EV is not the answer. And in that apocalyptic world, hybrid is what people are gonna go to. You have to keep in mind the infrastructure required to have EVs charging elsewhere outside the home is something we haven't tackled yet, right? There are examples of California where they had like rolling blackouts and they couldn't handle the EV electricity hub, and it just didn't work. And there are plenty of parts of the country where EV charging is just non-existent. If you drive east of Colorado and like west of West Virginia, that whole mid part of the country that I've driven through a couple of times, there's nothing but people live there. And there are no chargers, there's no EVs, there's nothing you can do. You just have to have a gas car, and gas there is, still $1.50, $2 a gallon. So hybrid is probably the answer. I don't think EV is the answer. And EVs, they're popular now, but they're taking a dump. You can get a used Tesla for like 20 grand right now. So, I mean, how much higher could they possibly go when used Teslas from the Hertz lot are $19,999?
Yeah, but who makes a hybrid? There's only a couple of companies that make hybrids. If gas prices shoot up tomorrow, I agree with you that hybrid is the way to go. I actually totally agree with that. But I'm saying in a massive market fluctuation, which we are faced with right now, that could actually happen, it could happen anytime within the next 9 months, right? If overnight we saw gas prices double, it could happen. There aren't enough hybrids. I agree with you. Every hybrid that's for sale gets sold, but Toyota is pretty much the only company making them, and good luck getting any Toyota right now. So again, I pose the question, is there a potential dip if that happens? What do you think, Frank?
I mean, here's the thing. You think about the 70s and the gas crunch there, and then everyone that went from Ford Country Squires to Honda Civics, right?
Yep.
Think how politicized EVs have become. I think there's still going to be people that even if what you are positing happens, I don't think everyone's going to go over. Now, maybe the people that have politicized it and have made their decisions based on those lines, based on as opposed to the vehicle's merits, maybe some of them are holdouts, but all of a sudden you're charging 2x for gas, depending on their wherewithal. They may be singing a different tune, the day after gas prices double.
Right, and that's the big question, right? So, anyways, did we even get to the number on this car?
No,
that's really, I could care less how much this car brings. Really, I just wanted to bring it up because I feel like there's some real potential market pressures that could change everything very quickly, and we know that our government wants EVs to happen. So, would you put it past them to make a situation where it does? Or I don't even need to necessarily say it like that, but it wouldn't surprise me if a disaster happened, that the powers that be would be jumping all over that. I feel like if something like that did happen, I could see the government saying, okay, we're bringing back the subsidies. It's $10,000 if you buy an EV. I heard somewhere, and I don't know if this is true. I don't even know how to substantiate it, but my understanding is if even 20% of the market, because the current EV market is like single digit percentage. I think it's like 4 or 5%. Somebody in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong.
Still, 8, 6-7% somewhere around.
Yeah,
there.
so it's single digit. Okay, Wade always knows. If we were to somehow, if we were somehow to get up to 20%, if the car market flexed and was 20% of the car market was EVs, we would be using up all the materials to make EVs. Like, they can't mine enough of the precious metals or rare earth materials to make the batteries and stuff. I don't even think we could if we wanted to. Yeah, everybody's so okay. All that said, let's get to some numbers because the nerd herd is already throwing the numbers out here. Michael's at 75 grand, Dark Closet's at 90, Gerd's at 85. Let's see here, Randy B's at 92. I'm throwing a whole bunch of nerd herd numbers out there. Michael Deeb, you get first bid. What do you think?
All right, so JP, our car closes in a day or two. Let me go back and read this. Our car closes on Tuesday. It is currently sitting at $74,000 on 7 bids. I definitely glazed over what is in this car. JP, this car is unbelievable spec for a base Taycan 4 Cross Turismo. So a $93,000 MSRP, but our car is equipped with things like PDCC, Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control, which you would not expect to see on anything other than like a turbo. That also means it's got torque vectoring plus, InnoDrive with adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist. And it's also got the 18-way adaptive sport seats. So somebody decked this thing out like it was a GTS, and it's just the base Taycan 4 Cross Turismo. So at a $93,000 base price, our car MSRP at $122 because it's got nearly $30,000 in options. Well done. So initially at 74, I thought this car would peter out at just 80 grand, but I'm going to give it $2,000 more and go $82,000 is what it's going to take this thing home. I also think, and John, Frank, Wade, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I think the guy should have spent the money to take the wrap off the car. I think it looks like it was done to a high standard, but I think the black that the car was born in would have a broader appeal, and then you could focus more of the attention on the equipment, which is what sets this car apart, not the polarizing color. So even if it cost $1,000 to get the wrap off professionally, I think that the seller should have done that before they photographed the car, and I think the car would have brought more money. At that point, I think he would have been staring $90,000 or even $95,000 in the face because of how unusually equipped this car is. I think he would have done really well like that. Does anybody in the office agree with me? John, what do you say?
I do not. You're a blue hater.
Really?
Today. You're a blue phobe all of a sudden. Yeah. You like the blue Speedster, and he doesn't like the blue. Like I said, Kelly's is this color. Like, Porsche people are all about the stupid colors. I mean, it's like...
But it's a wrap, John.
I know it's a wrap. I get it, but it's the kind of thing that's why... that's the only reason I noticed this car. If I were scrolling through cars and bids, I would not have noticed a black Taycan. I mean, it just would have blurred into, this particular color, and the fact that, frankly, Kelly has one, and I see him posting about it on socials quite often. It surprised me to see one this color because it's such a dope color. I think I think that it kind of represents the best of both worlds. Okay, it's black. If it gets the attention, and then you find out that it's actually a black one, oh, cool, I can change my mind down the road, I guess. I don't know. I actually... I think the guy, he spent all the money on this car in the first place. He should have got paint to sample, and he should have just got it this color. I think it would bring more money. I actually would prefer the all black one, but let's hear. What is Kelly saying here? He says, people shouldn't buy a new Taycan like I did. Fun for me to try, but doesn't make sense. We'll just get cheaper, spend more money, and buy an FF. That's good advice from someone who I think has done both. All right, so I guess it's time to get the number. You said what number? 80-something, Deeb? 82?
$82,000 is all it's going to take this car home.
I'm going $89,000. I think this thing gets close.
I think you're the buyer for this car.
If I were going to get an electric car, this is what I would get. But that's where I think. What do you think, Wade?
The wrap on this car is the only reason it's getting eyeballs. So
Yep.
I support it, and it matches my berry lemonade sun kiss. So
I'm
a fan. I'm a fan.
Oh, Wade, I'm so disappointed. I was really looking forward to you agreeing with me.
You wanted him to be drinking some kind of black drink over there? That's weird.
I'm not a black coffee drinker in my old black Porsche. This is young, it's vibrant, it's hip, it's cool. It's what I think this buyer is looking for. And at the end of the day, like JP said, you can rip it off and have a whole new car. It can be a nice, classy, all black for your Friday night evenings. The thing about this car, though, as high spec as it seems, it's still a slow EV by this standard, right? There are better Taycan specs with 550 horsepower and more options and more whatevers. So I think that's going to hold this car back a little bit. I don't think it's going to hit 80. I think it's going to stall out at 79,000.
Thank you, Wade.
And I think that's more just the car, not the wrap, Michael Deeb. Just the car.
Okay.
Frank, how do you RWB this thing? Come on.
Wider is better. We all know that. So, it's interesting. I drove the Taycan Turbo S at Thermal Raceway, and the drive was sublime. And mind you, it was just a sedan. It wasn't the long roof, but an amazing drive. And in terms of the wrap on this one, I guess it kind of depends on what condition the wrap is in. If it's in great condition, I would have left it. I personally can't abide by black cars anymore. There was a point in time where I thought I would only ever own black cars. Now I wouldn't take one if you gave it to me. So I heard black is not a color; it's a hobby when it comes to cars. So I'm gonna say 87,000.
All right. There it is, you guys. That's some bids right there. The Nerd Herd is all over this. I'm really curious to see what this does. I'm hoping that my scenario doesn't happen overnight and all of a sudden this thing's worth a whole bunch more tomorrow because we can't afford gas. But in the meantime, it'll be fun to watch. What cars are you watching on the auctions this week? That's the thing. The Nerd Herd is so involved with us, right? They're always in here in the the Nerd Nation. They're always commenting and stuff like that. But we need to get more submissions. Chris Carbine is always sending me stuff. Buddha's always sending me stuff. But the rest of you guys, come on, find us some cool cars on the list. Chef always sends us stuff. Yeah, send us the cars that you want us to cover, and we will. That's it, guys. Frank, where can we find you when you're not out driving one of most of the 491s that exist because you own them all?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to corner the market one car at a time. So my Instagram is amoroso.frank, and you spell Amoroso Amoroso.
Talk to Deeb about that one. Thank you very much.
No way.
And I'm there playing with cars and watches and pretty much anything fine mechanical. Always happy to talk Porsche. I used to work at my uncle's shop when I was a teenager on the weekends and in the summers.
Lad.
Yeah, and so when these mid to late 80s 911s were new in period, I was geeking out over them back then and have been really ever since. So always happy to help, always happy to go look at a car for somebody, and always happy to talk M491s in excruciating painful detail. I have this thing that I think all Porsche people find a rabbit hole and then dive into that. Some people are generalists in the Porsche world, but that's just the particular rabbit hole that I've dove into and continue to burrow down in. So.
Well done. Thanks, Frank, for coming on.
Very nice. All right. And Wade, how's Tech Daily doing over there?
Good. If you want to break from cars and need a new phone or want to review on some earbuds or anything else, or if you just want to come say hi, at Tech Daily on YouTube, come say hello. That's where I'll be this week. And thanks, Frank, and everybody else for being here. JP, did you answer the very important question from the comments? How do they get the cars to you?
That I did. I've got the answer up right now. Just DM us on Instagram. Go on Instagram. Make sure you follow us over there.
Slide into his DMs right now.
That's right.
DMs are open.
All right. Yeah, the nerd her dick pics on the way. That's going to be fun. All right. Michael Deeb, if someone has a fancy Porsche that they want to get rid of, or any classic car, really, you can help them out with that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So Porsche actually, what company do I work for? Haggerty and Broad Arrow Group have decided to do a live Porsche auction on Saturday, the 27th of April, in official conjunction with Luftgekühlt Air and Water Show in Costa Mesa, California. And we are accepting consignments right now. We are just wrapping up the Amelia Island Concours. We had a 2-day auction on Friday and Saturday and knocked it out of the park with a 90% sell-through rate. And did really, really well. That was an outstanding auction. So now all of our collective focus is on getting really interesting, amazing consignments. If you have or know of somebody that wants to sell an excellent Porsche and would be interested in talking to me about having that in the live auction, please reach out to me at Deeb, MDEEB at Haggerty.com. And let's send me an email, shoot me a note, and let's talk about the car and see if we can't make a deal. Thanks.
Well, here's a car that might wind up on an auction site near you sometime. Hopefully not. Don't buy this one. We're going to end the show. Lots of new stuff coming up on Dirt Fascination, guys. Unlike most other places blessed with magnificent roads, the Crest is less than an hour out of Los Angeles, a place where winter isn't really a thing. So cars like classic air-cooled 911s never have to worry about non-functioning heat exchangers that won't defrost a foggy windshield, or roads too slippery for a tail-happy rear-engine vintage car to stick to in a corner. But nearly perfect driving conditions are not the case for all 365 days a year. Every now and then, this benign garter snake will grow fangs and turn into a cobra. Michael, you're one of the nicest guys I know. Last winter, you lent your RSA to a friend from out of town so we could drive the Crest. What were the roads like?
Right. So when we got up there, certain parts of the road still had a lot of gravel and debris on the road, and they had only recently been cleared.
Was your buddy prepared for that?
Knowing that he grew up in Budapest, where at least a third of the year there's snow on the ground, I naturally felt that he's a competent driver that can handle a car in pretty much any conditions.
Okay, so we had breakfast. What happened after that?
We went off down the mountain, and after about a mile, I kind of kicked it in gear, and I kind of left him alone behind me.
Uh-oh.
So driving for a little while, I realized I couldn't see him any longer behind me in the mirror, so I pulled over to the side of the road to wait for him. At that point, my heart was in my stomach. And
well, yeah, I remember I asked you where he was, and the moment I told you that I hadn't seen him, you and Esther took off up the mountain back towards Newcomb's Ranch. What was that drive like?
Yeah, so neither one of us were looking out the windshield. We were both like looking out our side windows, looking for some evidence, like the car on the side of the cliff or something, and we didn't find anything all the way up to Newcomb's. And that was gut-wrenching. That was the worst 25 minutes.
It was weird because the air smelled like fresh dirt on the corner just before where you were waiting for us. But you were gone before I could even tell you that. So that's where we went to look.
Right. We start to head back down the mountain from Newcomb's Ranch, and within a quarter mile, we see Ben, the professor. He rolls down the window and says, "We found him. He went off the road, but he's okay." It's like the first time in 20 minutes we could exhale. And I think more than anything, I was just relieved that my friend was alive. Like it was really fucking scary.
So what happened when you finally saw him?
The first thing he did was close his eyes in front of me and apologize for wrecking the car. And I just put my arms around him and I said, "I'm just glad you're okay." He turned around, he looked down the hill, he pointed at the car and he said, "Michael, that car saved my life."
Coming soon to RWB.
So funny. You know, it's funny. The first couple of years, all I tell people is that I was so happy he was okay. They had told us they were pregnant, and then the morning we went up on the drive, his realtor called him, and he had closed on a house in Cincinnati. I was so thrilled that he was in okay shape. But over the last couple of years, the way prices have gone crazy, and the fact that I've been in G bodies ever since, I have really started to miss that 964 so much that now I'm pissed that he crashed my car. But it took like 5 years to get to that point. But now I'm livid he wrecked my RSA. That car was outstanding. Man, you know, after 2 consecutive 915 gearboxed cars and like I get the flex, you know, from trying to shift that thing through gears, man, do I miss that car. Look at it. It was right before those photos were taken. It was beautiful, you know?
Just put some fenders on it.
Yeah.
Get those words!